What's up, everybody? Welcome back into the Letterman Lounge, I guess, the Letterman Live Studios. It is a recruiting crossover with breaking news because Ohio State has officially landed a commitment from former Kansas State quarterback Will Howard. That's Andy Bax on the other side of that screen. Andy, we are in emergency mode. We are in all hands on deck mode. And Will Howard is in Buckeye mode because he has committed to Ohio State. 4-year player at Kansas State. I've talked to many people about this move. It was expected since a few days before the Cotton Bowl things had been progressing pretty quickly once the wheels started turning there to get Will Howard to Columbus. Now he's in Columbus for a visit, and now he is committed to Ohio State. First thoughts, Andy, as we kind of try to unravel everything pretty much on the fly.
Well, as you mentioned, this isn't too much of a surprise. It feels like in the transfer portal, there were a couple quarterbacks that caught Ryan Day and the staff's eyes. It seemed like Riley Leonard was one of them. He ends up at Notre Dame, going from Duke. And then the other one was Will Howard from Kansas State. And it just feels like we kept hearing those two names. And eventually it was just Will Howard because Riley Leonard was already gone out of the portal. So Will Howard is a 6'5" quarterback, around 245 pounds. He's a dual threat, someone that can run the football pretty effectively, but also can drop back and has some talent passing the football. He's from Downingtown, Pennsylvania, which is kind of right where I'm from too. So that area of Pennsylvania, again, he's a quarterback that has experience. Most importantly, I think that's what you mentioned. And when you look at this Ohio State quarterback room, there's just not a lot of experience right now. We saw that in the Cotton Bowl with Devin Brown making his debut, first start. Then that was short-lived, and then Lincoln Kienholz was thrust into that opportunity as the third string turned starter, almost, if you will, in that game. So I think that's the big part here, Spencer, is that this is experience, someone that's been through it. He's won a conference title game. He's been in this position before of playing for a Power 5 team and starting for one. And I think that's what you're getting as a guy that's been here before. I know Ohio State's different, and I get that it's a different part of, Power 5 football and the landscape of college football, but you have a guy that started games before.
Absolutely, you do. You've got a guy who played during the COVID season despite being a true freshman and not really having much of a chance to do anything in the summer that year, still impressed enough to play, kind of thrust into a role there during the COVID year. 2021, he plays a little bit of a mix with Adrian Martinez. 2022, he's also the guy. And then this year, he was the bona fide starter for all 12 games, 61.3% passing completion percentage, 2,643 yards, 24 touchdowns, 10 picks this year, over 5,700 yards passing for his career. In the last 3 years, though, Andy, I take the COVID year out because he was a true freshman, and you don't want to dismiss it, but also true freshman playing during the COVID year, I'll go ahead and give him the pass on that. You take out those stats, and his stats look way better than they do in general. In general, he's 48 touchdowns, 25 picks in his career. If you take out the COVID year, it's 40 and 15. That's much better. That's not even adding the rushing stats. He had 9 rushing touchdowns this year. I think he has 19 in his career. Just a really productive player. You see the arm strength. You see shades of accuracy where he can improve. You see him doing things with decent weapons, not great weapons, guys who maybe practice squatted on the NFL or have gotten a little bit of a shot. Now he's going to have first-round talents to throw to. He's going to have guys at his disposal to work with. And you have to think that that's going to benefit Will Howard as he steps now into the Ohio State quarterback room for what we can only believe is at least spring competition. If Ryan Day wasn't willing to guarantee the job, and I'm sure we'll get into this later, but if Ryan Day wasn't willing to guarantee the job to the incumbent from last year, Kyle McCord, there's no saying that he was willing to guarantee it to Will Howard. But Will Howard, with 1 year of eligibility left, he's not coming in here to compete with somebody else and potentially lose that job. I think it's safe to say that you head into spring now, assuming Will Howard is at worst QB1B, and at best he's just QB1.
Yeah, that's a fair assumption, but I agree with you're saying. Like, Ryan Day is not going to hand a job to anyone, and even if Devin Brown had played amazingly in the Cotton Bowl, he still wouldn't have been guaranteed the starting role going into the spring. So this was always going to be some kind of competition, whether it was just going to be Devin Brown, Lincoln Kienholz, and even Aaron Noland. Well, now you bring in Will Howard to the conversation. I think, yeah, of course, he's given this opportunity, and it's going to be his job to win. I don't think it's going to be like he's guaranteed, roll him out right now. He's going to start the first week of the season. It's fair to assume he will. Usually that's what happens when you get these big names in transfer portal. But you never know. I mean, sometimes guys don't play well in new environments. It is a different situation. It's not a 1-to-1 from Kansas State to Ohio State. It's a different level of competition. The Big Ten is different from the Big 12. And playing at Ohio State under the microscope of being the quarterback at this school, that's a different deal too. So I'm really curious to see how Will Howard handles this situation. I'm curious to see how Devin Brown handles this situation and what he does from this point forward. Does he go, at some point to the transfer portal between now and the end of spring? Does he decide to stick around and try to see out another competition for the QB1 position at Ohio State? And then how does this affect, someone like Lincoln Keenholz who, was in the spotlight in the Cotton Bowl, but now, you're looking at, do I have a chance in this kind of competition with a veteran like Will Howard?
Yeah, that's the thing for me with the rest of the quarterback room, and I guess we're already there. Before we bring Tim May, the 40-year vet, in to get his perspective, Andy, before we do bring Tim in, I wanted to just touch on it because I think this sets up perfectly for Lincoln Keenholz. Like, you talk about learning from Devin Brown and Kyle McCord for a year. You knew that you were a developmental player. There was not really much of a reason to think that he was going to come in and play, especially in year one, but even in year two as a prospect, you kind of have the path laid out for you that it was either going to be Kyle, then Devin, then you, or Kyle, and then maybe you. And now it's just Kyle and Will Howard or Devin Brown, and then you. I think this timeline sets up much better for Lincoln Keenholz than it does for Devin Brown. And I think it sets up even better for an Aaron Nolan to learn for 11 months under a guy like Will Howard and Lincoln Keenholz and maybe Devin Brown and Ryan Day and the brain trust there to go forward with the rest of your career. And I wrote that at lettermanrow.com in the first thoughts, what the commitment means. It's like, this sets up really well for the future of the quarterback room. But when you talk about whether it sets up well for Devin Brown, we're not going to make any assumptions on January 4th, but it is difficult to see where this goes for Devin Brown unless he comes in the spring and just beats Will Howard out and makes Will Howard maybe go back in the portal to try to find something in the spring window. So it works out much better for those two younger guys, that I think, than it does for Devin Brown if you're just talking about Will Howard being the starter.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's like possible, right, that Devin Brown
Yeah.
could do that.
Yeah.
But certainly Will Howard has the resume, right? At this point, he's got the durability at this point. He has starts season after season stacked. And I think that carries a lot of weight in a year that matters so much for not only Ryan Day, but this program. 3 straight losses to Michigan. We don't need to say all that. Everyone knows it's watching the show what's on the line. I mean, we have Michigan right now that's about to play for a national title. And Ohio State is trying to figure out its staff, trying to figure out its quarterback position, trying to figure out its offensive line, and a program that characteristically in Ryan Day's tenure has been so great offensively has just been not what it's been this past year. And so you have to think, okay, what can we do to give ourselves the best chance to be successful, not just successful, but explosive offensively. And someone that's been there and done that is Will Howard. And I think, I'm looking at the PFF stats and stuff like that. And like his adjusted completion percentage is 70%, right? So he's, as you mentioned, not dealing with weapons that you have at Ohio State that he didn't have at Kansas State. So sometimes those stats that you look at, just the normal stats, don't paint the whole picture. I think those would have looked better had he been surrounded by, the Marvin Harrison Jr., the Mecca,
Yes.
et cetera. So if I were, just a fan, I wouldn't read too much into the numbers right now, at least the base numbers. But there's a lot to be excited about with this kind of player.
Yeah, Ohio State fans, if you have a question about the Will Howard edition, just drop them in the YouTube comments. We'll try to get to those when we can. Let's bring the 40-year vet in. He knows the quarterback transfer market. He knows the Ohio State team side more than anybody on planet Earth. Maybe short of Ryan Day, but I'd still give the edge to the 40-year vet, Tim May. Tim, your first thoughts on Will Howard joining Ohio State as its presumably next starting quarterback?
Quality pickup. I mean, I still want to see the competition between him and Devin, a healthy Devin Brown in the spring and preseason camp. I mean, I don't think Devin Brown's going to go quietly into that good night. We haven't seen Devin Brown play the way he's capable of playing. We saw it for a quarter, and he was being chased, harassed, etc. So I'm not just sitting here throwing rose petals that Will Howard is the guy, but Will Howard, like you just pointed out, Eddie just pointed out, I mean, his adjusted stats when you take into account, which basically adjusts for how good your team is or the people who are around you are, and how good you are. I mean, this could be a very strong pickup for the Buckeyes. I'm not going to put it in the Bo Nix, Michael Penix realm in terms of transfer quarterbacks who immediately juice things up. It has the possibility of being in that realm, but like I said, there's competition to come. The great thing is there's competition to come, and just when Devin Brown was getting going, he got the rug pulled out from under him, or the rug didn't get pulled out from under him, and he twisted his ankle. So it is what it is. But this is an exciting pickup because I think this is a quality dude. He's moving back sort of closer to his hometown. He's one of those guys that probably, definitely was sort of under the radar in terms of how good he possibly could be when he was recruited several years ago, and some people passed on him. But he checks a lot of boxes. He's big, he's tall, he's big, he can run, but he also can throw. And you got to think under Ryan Day's tutelage, he's going to get even better at throwing the ball. So I know I just came in backstage here. I'm a little verklempt, but the bottom line is I had a little trouble getting on earlier, but that has nothing to do with anything. Will Howard didn't have any trouble getting on. He has signed on with the Buckeyes, or will sign on. Do we know if this is totally official yet?
It is a commitment from first from Pete Thamel, second from On3's Hayes Fawcett, who talks to these kids directly. I think just about everybody has confirmed it, but I will credit a little bit of pat on the back for everybody involved. Tim, you've been hearing this for a while. Andy, you've been hearing about this for a while. Alex Gleitman, the Letterman Lounge message board, was all over this as well. So, I mean,
hey, wait a minute. And look, we talked about the other day. I think we did. I mean, there were people basically saying this was probably going to happen as I'm sitting there watching warm-ups on the sideline in the Cotton Bowl almost a week ago now. Seems like 4 weeks ago. But you know what I mean by that. But the bottom line is this it was going to be a bigger upset if this didn't happen, I guess, is what we talked about earlier, right?
Yeah, absolutely, Tim. And I will read this. Will Howard did talk to Pete Thamel about it, so I guess it is official that he's committed. It's not. I don't think it's official that he's signed, but he is on campus. He could very easily sign and just be on the roster now. He told Pete Thamel from ESPN, when I started talking to Ohio State, everything kind of lined up. I had a list of things I was looking for in terms of needing to go somewhere where there was a lot of talent around me and compete for a national championship. That's the biggest thing for Will Howard. Now he has the opportunity to do that. Andy, what's the ceiling here? I mean, we kind of have to get into it already. And it's maybe unfair because we don't know what's returning. We don't know what's going to be on the roster. But when you look at Will Howard, he has a Big 12 championship. He's a starting quarterback of a Big 12 champion who beat the national runner-up in the Big 12 championship game in TCU. He's got wins over good teams. He's got very impressive performances against good teams. Like the performance against Texas this year was nothing short of legendary. In the comeback, Kansas State almost pulls that comeback off. Your thoughts on, Andy, I'll get you first and then I'll go to Tim. Your thoughts on the ceiling for Will Howard at Ohio State?
I think the ceiling's pretty high. That being said, I don't think it's quite the Michael Penix going from Indiana to Washington, or quite the Bo Nix from Auburn to Oregon, just because he's not as polished of a passer. He's not a great deep ball thrower at this point. And again, I get that some of that is based on who he had around him. And I think those numbers will look better at Ohio State. But, one of the best things that we heard about Devin Brown was his deep ball was really great leading up to the bowl game. We didn't get to see that because he didn't have time to throw. So I still don't know about that evaluation. But when I look at Will Howard, it's the dual threat ability, the running power and speed that he has. He had a 70-yard touchdown run this season. He had, almost double-digit rushing touchdowns this year on the ground. So he is someone that you can really do both with. That dual threat ability with Devin Brown, I feel like it's been more talked about than we've seen so far. So, there is that we know that exists already for Will Howard. And that seems to be something that Ryan Day really wants, because you look at the quarterback room right now, it's Devin Brown, who can run. It's Lincoln Keenholz, we saw can run. That's why he got in that game, because the zone read stuff they like with both of those guys. And then Aaron Nolan is not quite as much of a runner as those other guys, but he's mobile if you want him to be. But you're basing, you got 3 or 4 guys in that quarterback room who are really dual threats. And I think that's a good thing to have a quarterback room where a lot of guys fit the same skill set.
Tim?
Yeah, what I like about him, what I like about Will Howard, and by the way, I'm not talking about Michael Penix Jr. and Bo Nix today. I'm talking about when they transferred. They were trying to, juice up their career. Obviously, Penix was looking for better guys to play with, for want of another term, right? And Bo Nix was almost a forgotten soul at Auburn, and found a way to resurrect his career and show what he was all about. This is what I'm kind of looking at, even though Will Howard has had some great success at Kansas State. But what stands out in this age, you got to have a guy that can run and run with authority at quarterback. And I'm not saying he becomes your primary running threat, as you all know. I'm not talking about that. But when this guy decides to run, he is a big time threat. And his passing, like I said, in my opinion, has gotten better the longer he's been in college. What did he throw, like 10 interceptions though or something this year? Ryan Day just hates that. Hates interceptions. But you have to take everything with a grain of salt when you're analyzing guys. What he brings though is that dual threat capability that is legitimate. And I just think it's going to be an interesting spring, fellas, because I really truly believe Devin Brown has those very same things, and you just didn't get to see it yet. But I think that's a good thing, not a bad thing. And and then you got Aaron Nolan. Maybe I should refer to him as the Michael Penix in this group since he's left-handed. But I just think it could be very interesting spring because they like, as you know, they like Lincoln Keenholz down the road. They like this guy. They've got Tavian St. Clair committed, for next year's class, which they like. He's a big, strong guy who's only going to get bigger and stronger. And they like Aaron Nolan. He throws like a classic left-hander, meaning he's very accurate, can zip it when he needs to, etc. So they're all 4-5 really going to be a little bit different. But we're talking about the immediate future, which is 2024 for this football team. I think it's going to be a Devin Brown, Will Howard competition, and it's going to be just like August was fun not to watch because we didn't get to watch it, right? This coming August is going to be fun not to watch.
Yeah, assuming that both of those quarterbacks are still here in August. There is a spring transfer window. The thing now is that the Ohio State spring roster, guys who were on the roster in December, they are going to be on the roster in the spring unless they're okay with sitting out for the spring and just waiting to enter the transfer portal afterward, which doesn't make much sense.
Let's don't put that cart before the horse, because Devin Brown's pledged his allegiance to Ohio State many times, for example. Lincoln Keenholz saw an opportunity and had to run for his life most of the night in the Cotton Bowl. But you could just see, just talking to him after the game briefly, he was fired up, man. He finally got some stuff on video, good and bad on video. As Anders Backstrom pointed out, when he wasn't harassed, he was pretty damn good throwing the football, right? And that was a freshman out there who'd only been in school since June. So, I think everybody's going to play through the spring, which is what you're talking about, I know. But I can't see any of these guys going anywhere before August myself, just based on where they are in their college careers. And Devin Brown wanting so much to prove that he does belong in that pilot seat.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to watch because there's not a reason that any of them can't win the job, but also Ohio State's not bringing in Will Howard to just spice up the competition like that. That's not, and Will Howard's not coming to Ohio State with only 1 year of eligibility remaining to just, roll the dice out there and see if he can win a job. He's going out there.
Yeah, but I don't think we're not going to intimate they promised him the starting job though, are
no,
we?
No, not by any means.
I haven't heard that. So
no, not by any means.
Yeah.
So that's why the spring is going to be so critical, so fun. And so pivotal for Ryan Day, not just for Will Howard, not just for Devin Brown or Lincoln Keenholz or Aaron Nolan, but Andy, for Ryan Day.
Well put.
Ryan Day is almost, with such a huge year in 2024 coming, Ryan Day is almost hitching his wagon to whichever quarterback he chooses. I now, on January 4th, believe that probably will be Will Howard. competition pending, obviously. But whoever wins this job, Ryan Day is going to be hitching his wagon to, because 2024 is way too critical for him as a head coach, not just for whoever the quarterback is, Andy.
Yeah, and I think regardless of whatever happens, we're not going to see a situation where it gets played out at the beginning of the season. That didn't really work out this year. I just don't see it going that far. Whoever's going to be coming out of the spring, I feel like is going to be the guy, whether they say or not. I know they like that August 17 to 21 range of like announcing a guy, although it came later this year. I just don't see a couple games into the regular season where we go back and forth between Will Howard and Devin Brown. And also I'll say that Devin Brown, if he does indeed transfer after the spring, like in the spring window, he actually has a lot of leverage there. I know he's had pretty much everything go against his luck so far with injuries and just certain situations. But let's say he does enter the transfer portal, there's going to be a quarterback needy team that's going to be reaching out to him. And so whether it's him that's in the portal in the spring, or whether it's Will Howard that has to enter the portal because he loses a competition to Devin Brown, there's going to be demand because someone will get hurt or someone will just need another quarterback in the mix. And so I think that's worth pointing out, that it doesn't have to be that one of these guys is totally screwed over, for lack of a better word.
Prediction: there will not be a declaration of Ohio State starting quarterback coming out of the spring. That's my prediction for almost everything Andy Backstrom, son of a prominent attorney, just pointed out in his summation.
Yeah, it's interesting because you want to look for a comparison. There's not really a comparison, though. Like, Justin Fields came in and his two backups were Chris Chugunov, who was a fine player, and Gunnar Hoke, who was a fine player, but there wasn't much of a competition there. You could talk yourself into there not being much of a competition based on what we've seen on the football field for Will Howard, because he has I think 38 career games or something like that he's played in, and the rest of Ohio State combined, I think, has played 38 minutes of football. But it's hard to just say that, hey, he's the guy. And we did say that we were going to take some questions here. Somebody said, what happened to the fan base thinking Kansas State quarterback is the savior? Look, what I'll say about that, and I get it. You're taking a Kansas State quarterback and making him out to be the guy at Ohio State all of a sudden in the span of 2 weeks. But what I'll say is there are two quarterbacks playing in the national championship game on Monday night. Neither of them play for Ohio State. That's reason enough for you to act and go find what you need to get there. The second reason enough is to believe that Will Howard could do this is because one quarterback in the national championship game is a 5-star recruit who Ohio State chose somebody else over, just point blank. And the other one is a 3-star kid from Florida who started his career at one of the worst programs in the history of the Power 5, the Indiana Hoosiers. So not all quarterbacks are created equal, but not all quarterbacks and their paths are cookie cutter. And so for a section of the fan base to not be excited that Ohio State went out and got the best quarterback available that they thought was the best quarterback available in Will Howard, I think that's a little short-sighted. I also think it's a little trying to find a reason to be pessimistic, to be honest, because not every path is linear. Not every path is the same for these quarterbacks. And, if the Kansas State quarterback is what Ohio State needs to go win a national championship and get back on top of the Big Ten and beat Michigan, then so be it, because that's what they're going to do to try to win.
And here's the thing. You can turn on video. You can turn it on right now and watch Will Howard compete at a very high level for Kansas State, making plays both with his feet and his arm. You can watch him. You can see the potential that's there. We're talking about a physical dude who happens to play quarterback. This isn't pulling some rabbit out of a hat somewhere. This is, my opinion, best of the rest available, right? I mean, that's my opinion. And ranks right up there with some of the guys that have been ballyhooed for moving in this off season. So already, that's where I stand with that. I mean, it's like you said, Spence, it's easy to sit here and cast stones, but I mean, if you're picking up a transfer quarterback out of the portal from anywhere, you're getting somebody who's been disillusioned and or wants to step up, from either where he's been, where he's had to raise a supporting cast around him, or has been passed over and disillusioned but by maybe what's going on. I mean, Ungalele, just committed to Florida State. I mean, he was at Oregon State for 1 year, sort of raised that program, but not to the heights it needed to get to beat Washington and Oregon. And it was what it was, right? So there are all kinds of like chinks in the armor for a lot of these guys. But this Will Howard, man, you turn on the tape right now, you can see he's been in college for a while. He's played for a hell of a football coach the last couple of years, and the results, kind of show that and reflect that. And I don't know, this like I said, it's going to be a very interesting spring because of that. So yeah, it's easy to just throw rocks at a situation, but to complain they didn't get a guy and then complain who they got, I mean, anybody can do that. Andy, you could do that.
Well, look, we go into the Woody Hayes Athletic Center so many times throughout the year, right? Right now, there's hanging up a Big Ten championship banner from 2020. This team had not made the Big Ten championship since then. And that has been something that's talked about players, that's been talked about by coaches, and pretty much everyone that's in that building. They're bringing in a quarterback who, yes, I get it, it's the Big 12, not the Big 10. He's won a conference championship against a Heisman finalist, against a player that was playing for a national title game. And that says something. You're bringing in someone that knows how to win, and we can dissect the stats and try to compare and see what it would look like if he had Marvin Harrison Jr. Fact of the matter is, he's won something. This Ohio State team is trying to win something. They didn't win what they wanted to this year. They didn't accomplish any of those big goals. And they need someone that can help them do that, and someone that can stay on the field and give the skill set that Ryan Day wants to build this offense around, because this offense was not as explosive or as dynamic as they needed it to be this year. And they're trying to get a lot fixed right now, and they think that Will Howard can be part of that equation.
Yeah, and the thing about stands out to me about Will Howard is he's one of those kind of guys, despite the competition, wherever they're going, he rarely blinks and doesn't flinch. That's what you want. I mean, Ryan Day, I don't need to even talk to Ryan Day and ask him this question. I know he was supremely disappointed by the touchdown production from this offense this year. And some of it was because you had an offensive line getting his act together. And I said that tongue in cheek, obviously, because they scored no touchdowns in the last game we got to see, which was the Cotton Bowl. But there was also development of a quarterback who kind of got to kind of a level in Kyle McCord, and then kind of gradually made steps. So like I described it as let me get on camera here. It's like an electrocardiogram, Yeah. Kyle McCord has the, steps up on some podcast, today or yesterday, and says the media covering Ohio State didn't get it right about why he was leaving. But what I think we did get right was this was going to be a quarterback competition again. And by that, I mean, we're all the media that cover Ohio State. He didn't really talk to anybody who covers Ohio State. So you can say what you want to, but don't blame necessarily the messengers when you had nothing to say to them on the way out the door, is the way I would leave that. And clearly, Ryan Day was not in a happy place with his starting quarterback coming out of the regular season and wanted to make a change. Thought he had a guy on the roster already, Devin Brown, who challenged in the preseason and then challenged again in the middle of the year, only to suffer a high ankle sprain, which took him out the rest of the regular season. Now he's coming back. Cotton Bowl, gets hurt again, the other ankle. But the bottom line is, I think Ryan Day today, pardon the pun, feels a lot better about his quarterback room going into the spring than he did, 5 hours ago, because he's got that commitment from this guy that they pursued. And, Ryan Day is producing pretty good quarterbacks.
I always look at, and this might be not the best metric of will a guy be good or not, but I always look at the suitors. Who are the suitors for these transfer portal guys? If no offense to the other programs, but if you're beating Pitt and North Carolina for a quarterback, your quarterback is probably more of a Pitt and North Carolina level, or I don't know, a school like Syracuse. Your quarterback is probably more in that level than he is Ohio State's level. If you're beating out USC and what Mario Cristobal wants Miami to be for a starting quarterback in the transfer portal, that guy's probably a pretty high-level player. And it's not just Ryan Day who sees the vision. It's also Lincoln Riley who sees the vision, who has Heisman Trophy aspirations every single year for his starting quarterbacks, the same as Ryan Day. Mario Cristobal, who wants to get Miami to a national championship more than maybe any coach wants to get any program anywhere.
It has the wherewithal to compete off the field, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no kidding. So, like, that's where I look at this, and I guess the proof will be in the pudding. But for now, I think Ohio State, as we wrap this thing up, got a very, very talented player in Kansas State quarterback Will Howard. The Buckeyes obviously feeling better than they were, like you said, Tim, just a few short hours ago, as Will Howard is finally committed to Ohio State. It's been hinted for a long time on the Letterman Lounge message board. Go get that for $1 right now. If you're not a member right now, go get it. $1 for your first month to the Letterman Lounge. Come chat in the message board. It's growing every single day. A lot of friends.
It's cheaper than Peacock.
It certainly is, Tim. I don't know if Will Howard's going to get a chance to play on Peacock next year, but if he does, we'll have you covered at lettermanroad.com. Go get full coverage from Andy Backstrom, from Tim May, the 40-year vet, me, Spencer Holbrook, Alex Gleitman on the recruiting side, as well as Matt Parker. We've got it covered all year round. The Buckeyes hosting plenty more transfer portal targets this week, including a big-name offensive lineman who went in the portal recently. We'll have that covered at lettermanroad.com as well. Again, $1 for your first month. We'll see you guys over there as we wrap things up. Ohio State lands Will Howard, and now the 2024 season feels like it's officially underway.